What's going on, guys? Meteorologist Jonathan Kegas back with you. It's Monday evening, 8 o'clock. That means it is just about time for Tropics Watch Live. We have a lot to dissect in this live stream over the next 20-ish, 30-ish hours. First and foremost, though, wanted to say that we are thinking about everybody impacted by Hurricane Helene. Catastrophic doesn't even begin to describe the impacts from Florida to Southwest Virginia, where you can see there in the power outages, pretty much the path of where we still have power outages from the hurricane itself. And again, that's just the least of our worries. At this point, it was the intense flooding through the Carolinas, specifically Western North Carolina, where places are still very, very hard to reach. So we are thinking about everybody now, just, we know, an awful, terrible situation with Helene going forward. With that said, there's a lot of junk out there on social media, and I'm going to be pretty aggressive to those folks that are out there posting stuff irresponsibly. If we haven't learned our lesson from last week with saying, "Oh, it's not going to happen. Oh, it's going to happen. Oh, it's back. Oh no, it's gone. Oh, it's going this way." I feel as if those on YouTube that don't know what they're talking about did a very big disservice to the messaging late last week when Helene was coming ashore. So I just ask you to please make sure that you are getting your weather information, especially in times like this, from a credible source. If you're watching on clickorlando.com or on News 6 Plus, we hope that is News 6. If you're watching on the Just Weather channel, we hope that is us as well. And of course, we're coming at you live on the YouTube channel as well. So just wanted to get that out there, that we're thinking about you guys, and just to please be careful, because the garbage is already coming back at us. But again, we're going to talk about what Helene did and what it's still doing in terms of the power outages. You can clearly, again, see the track. I'm going to bring out my dabber here. And I mean, in Western North Carolina, we have counties with more than 100,000 people still without power, because a lot of these areas, as you may understand, it's almost impossible to get to some of these places. Some of the small towns outside of Asheville are basically unreachable, according to some reports there. The roads are washed out. It's crazy. I mean, I can't just, again, we're thinking about those people tonight. It's terrible. Some of the video that we can see, and again, some of the hardest hit areas may not have even been able to been reached yet. Just an awful situation. Look at all the rain. I mean, obviously, we had talked about that beyond a Category 4 hurricane making landfall in Florida's Big Bend, which did bring record surge to the Big Bend of Florida through the Tampa region as well. And it's the inland flood threat with some of these things, especially when they hit the mountains. It hit the same area in 1916. You think of Camille in Virginia with the terrain there, did the same kind of thing. You think about last year in Vermont, not completely tropically related, but the flooding from that as well. And then you had Irene several years back. It's just a terrible thing when these hurricanes and tropical systems have all of this moisture and then meet up with terrain. It doesn't end well. So I just hope everybody's doing okay tonight. And that's obviously the understatement of the year, because I know that there are people hurting in North Carolina, Georgia, South Carolina, Tennessee, Virginia, and of course, Florida, where the storm made landfall and just brought crazy, terrible, damaging surge. I want to show you the radar estimates now of what fell over the past 7 days. And again, this was basically the event. We had a PRE, predecessor rainfall event, that kind of set the stage to this devastating flooding. So we had flooding already ongoing prior to Helene getting there. And this is going to be around Asheville again, anywhere from 17 inches. I think we have an actual truth report of about 31 inches of rain in and around Asheville. This is just radar estimates here because you can clearly see where the heaviest rain fell. I mean, even Augusta, Georgia, 12 to 15 inches of rain. Same for Atlanta. And then again, the crazy wind damage. We talked about that east of Atlanta, how the wind would just rage on because the storm is moving so fast it'd be able to maintain its intensity and that forward motion of that. And then the tornado threat through Georgia, the Carolinas on the eastern side. This was just a terrible storm. This is a no doubter. Retired. We're never going to hear of Helene again. No doubter. And it's going to be interesting to see what the billions of dollars in damage is in this one because obviously tons of damage from Sarasota, Bradenton. I mean, even Fort Myers, we had the second highest surge reported there, obviously behind Ian, and then Big Bend, Tampa area, and all that stuff. So Terry on the WKMG YouTube channel, I'm with you, my man. It's crazy. There's a way to get the information out there, and it's not what I saw last week. And I mean, I know I'm not the end all be all like policeman of weather kind of thing. That's my humble opinion. That what I saw last week, and I'm pretty passionate about this. I'm pretty fiery about this. If you follow me on Twitter or saw on Facebook, then you saw that that's something that's near and dear to my heart because even with this second thing, and we're going to get into the golf thing in just 1 second, but that kind of I let it go over the weekend. I was able to wind down from some of the stuff that I saw on social media, but it came back again when people are sharing model run and model run and showing the same areas impacted. Can it? Yes. But at the same time, you have to understand that we just went through a disaster, a catastrophe to say the least. So thank you guys for sitting through that and for listening to that. We are going to go forward with some of the stuff that I know you're here to actually watch. And that's, of course, the tropics. So here's the deal going on. We have a lot going on. If you follow the Tropics Watch newsletter, you can go to clickorlando.com/newsletters and you would have gotten it in your inbox already today. And I talked about how October is the new September for 2024. And here we go. We're ready to close out September. And the reason, and obviously we have activity out there, but this is the crazy stuff. It's September 30th. And now after like 8 weeks of waiting, and again, we don't want these things to be clear. But this was what was supposed to be happening in August and September. I think we've identified some of the limiting factors clearly, and we're going to break some of those down. Thankfully, we didn't have that because now by the time we get to October, these Cabo Verde season storms, and that's these guys here that roll, they're the Cabo Verde island chain, archipelago, I should say, right there. One of the issues was, and I'll kind of go on the squirrel tangent that I typically go on, it is right on in through here that where we had a lot of things rolling off of Africa in August in the first half of September. The water's a little cooler here, and there's a lot more dry air up there as well because of the Sahara Desert. So those waves, thankfully, didn't have a good shot to really make their trip across the Atlantic. Now, as we are watching the seasons change, the monsoon trough or the ITCZ, the Intertropical Convergence Zone, is going back down to the south. So while we still have the crazy warm water and now we have convective features coming through, we have these waves rolling off of Africa. One of these is not a wave. One of these is Kirk, a tropical storm, and it's expected to be a very strong hurricane. Again, thankfully, gonna stay out to sea, and I'll show you that forecast and coming up a little bit later. I want to talk more about the golf thing, and then we'll get into that if you're interested. But nonetheless, so that's the one thing that has changed. The forcing mechanism to get these tropical waves rolling off of Africa has moved back down into further south, and that's a seasonal thing. As we're going into the fall, you would expect that. Whoops, sorry, I did not mean to grab the whole map. You you would expect this area to push to the south. So that's one of the reasons why we're seeing the activity come back. The other reason, big reason, La Nina has tanked recently. This was the other thing. We expected La Nina to come on faster than it did. It was more gradual. But over the past couple of weeks, we have seen that cooler water over the Pacific come through. What that does is we've had it looks like a lot of the theories anyway, for one of the reasons why it was very, very quiet August and September, was we just had too much stability over the Atlantic. We had a lot of warm water, but not a ton to really force it up and maintain thunderstorms. Again, it's a good thing. I'm just talking about some of the science and meteorology behind it. But as we're getting into fall, we're cooling the upper atmosphere while we're also keeping that super warm water. We're generating more instability. The cooler Pacific waters are now focusing convection. The thunderstorms we have and need to get those tropical systems going, they're now back. That's now back. And then we also have another thing called the MJO, the Madden-Julian oscillation. There were issues where it looked like it was coming through in mid-August. I will admit, I thought the activity was going to spike in mid-August when we were going to have that MJO come through. I was not correct there. And the reason being for that, it got hung up on the Pacific side. If you recall, we had 4 simultaneous systems just to the west of Mexico, kind of getting close to Hawaii, that should have propagated back into the Atlantic side. It didn't, so I was wrong there, thankfully. I mean, I don't want to be right on that sense, but nonetheless, it didn't make it into the Atlantic, and it was actually in the negative phase, the subsidence phase, and it helped to really enhance the lack of activity. So that was one of the reasons why now we have the MJO. I'll show you that going forward, and all that stuff. So we'll keep it there. All right. So that is, of course, those 2 areas right there. We're going to have to watch this for the islands as well. With all likelihood, it is going to try to curve, but we're going to have to watch it. All eyes are on this thing here. And notice we've got 2 areas of potential development in the Pacific, so near the southern coast of Mexico. For the Atlantic basin, we have this big orange area, not yet developed. And if you were with us last week, we were talking about how these gyre situations are kind of hard to dissect because you don't know where the model thinks it's going to develop in anytime there's like a little lobe of low pressure. So you see what I'm talking about here. This is going to be Wednesday afternoon. And what we're looking at here is the GFS vorticity, the spin and the low levels of the atmosphere, and then the wind direction. So here are those 2 systems out in the Pacific. If you can kind of see, the screen's kind of cutting it off. So the GFS develops both of them. So we're looking for the colors. Anywhere you see colors are an area of spin, okay? So we have another one right here, and then we have this little stretched out guy up here. This is a cold front up here, kind of a stretched out area of vorticity. And then there's another area down toward the Bay of Campeche. So there are 4, maybe 5 areas that are going to be competing for dominance in this greater Central American gyre, okay? And as we take this forward out, notice how this just becomes a hodgepodge of stuff. This is now Sunday. We have stretched out area here. We have stretched out area here. And that has been kind of one of the trends of the weekend, to still try to pull something up from the Caribbean or Bay of Campeche, send it toward Florida, but being more of a discombobulated mess. Now, again, anytime it's heading towards a landmass, we're going to keep a close eye on this, because if one can consolidate quicker into the Western Caribbean and then miss out on all the mess, there's an opportunity for it to get strong. So I'm not closing the door on this thing to become something stronger. I'm just saying that there's going to be the potential for this to be kind of a sheared out mess, because we do have a stronger trough up there. If you remember with Helene, we were talking about it was cut off, it was slow moving, that kind of grabbed Helene up and pulled it into the Big Bend. This would kind of pull something up and then lift it and push it to Florida. So I want to show you here the atmospheric moisture, and I think this tells a really good story, because at the very least, we are going to have to be concerned with a lot of heavy rain once we get to the second half of the weekend. And this is mainly for Florida, a lot, and Central America, Yucatan Peninsula. we're going to have to watch that very, very closely. You see all the reds and purples, that is some high octane moisture. And whether it's one disturbance or a couple trying to get there, there's going to be a lot of tropical moisture draped across central and south Florida. That can certainly cause some flooding. Again, it's going to be way too early for a rainfall amounts because we have to see what kind of pieces get combined and how it's stretched out and how consolidated or not consolidated the system is. The one thing that does look pretty clear, you see all that blue, thumbs up if you see the blue on there. That is some big time dry air. So we have a cold front coming down. So again, that's going to be two things. It would be my hope anyway that while this thing gets lifted north, that cold front is going to induce some shear on the northern end of that system, and the storm is not going to like that. It'll try to weaken. So Rodney says about the WRF model on my Fox Hurricane site shows the spin in the Western Caribbean getting quite strong in 72 hours, 50 plus mile per hour. The WRF model is not the best one to use for the hurricanes. So I would caution using that one. Much like what we were saying with the graph model, a lot of people showed that model and I think tried to scare Central Floridians. In my opinion, that graph model was never going to go to see. It was verifying. It had Helene going to Cedar Key, which we know we went to Perry, right on the right edge of the cone. So it's certainly in the realm of possibilities. If we start to see trends that Western Caribbean lobe that I showed you wants to become dominant quick, then we're going to have another conversation on that. But I'm going to try to wish cast this into being, obviously we don't want inches and inches and inches of rain to flood things out either, but we don't want a strong hurricane, especially for what Floridians just went through and unfortunately are still going through. I want to show you something too that is being shared on social media. I don't want to say it's kind of misinformation because it's true. I'm going to bring up, let me go to analysis. And I want to go, okay, got to find it. Okay, so I want to show you this. What we're looking at here is the sea surface temperature anomaly over the last 7 days. So it's the change in sea surface temperature over the last 7 days. Now I'm showing you this because I don't want to give you a false sense of calm. Typically, when these hurricanes come through, they churn up a lot of cool water, and it helps to what am I trying to say? It helps to weaken future storms, pending they come at a relatively short amount of time afterwards because the water is going to be cooler. So you would think that anyway. Unfortunately, we are dealing with the Caribbean that has big time fuel. And this is why we look at the ocean heat content, because that means that we don't have just warm surface water. We have deep and warm surface water. So that's the thing. When we did see it cool a little bit, but really, let me show you my next thing in here. I think I have the sea surface temperature anomaly. We are still above normal, and everywhere you saw the blue. So yeah, we did bring up some cooler water, but we are still above normal. So it's not going to be the reason why water temperature is not going to be the reason why this thing wouldn't strengthen. It'd be wind shear this time. So I don't know if you're asking Cookie Monster about deep surface. So what we're looking at here, I'll show you. This is the sea surface temperature chart. This is the anomaly here. This is the actual sea surface temperature map that we're looking at here. So if I take the temperature of the Gulf of Mexico and into the Atlantic, you'll see that we have water temperatures still in the mid to upper 80s through the Yucatan Channel, closer to 90 degrees. So big time water. What that ocean heat content, ocean heat content is doing is not only is it's measuring the amount of energy beneath the surface as well. So if the storm is upwelling cooler water, we know that it's really not that much cooler, and it's really not going to do much to weaken the storm that's churning up the water or future storms coming. Hey, Daniel, what's going on, my friend? Good to see you on the live stream again. I hope that everything is okay where you are at in Western North Carolina. I hope you have power. If you can tell us what the situation is like, feel free if you feel comfortable sharing some stuff. I don't know if you're in the mountains or just in the foothills or whatever, but I know it's been rough for everybody. Yeah, Houston Media HD right on the head. I mean, I get nothing is impossible in the weather world, but now that we have these cold fronts coming through and these dips in the jet stream, the more likely, um, the more than likely path is for what we saw with Helene and what we could see with this thing. It's to kind of generate in the Western Caribbean or make their way through the Eastern Caribbean and then come up and then kind of work their way into the Eastern Gulf Coast. And some weird things can happen if they're in between systems. They can kind of stall out a little bit. So that's kind of the stuff that we look for. Again, it's not impossible, but it is super, super unlikely for a system to make its way through Texas. All right, we're going to do a season check-in, and then we're going to get to Kirk. That one will be a nice one to watch because it's likely going to be aesthetically pleasing on satellite. And we can say that because thankfully this is not going to impact anybody except for the fish. Okay, so real quick, Daniel's in Western North Carolina, so interesting to hear some ground truth reports here. He says, we're still without power, maybe by Friday for us, foothills, but some of my neighbors will be without power for a couple of weeks. So sorry to hear that, my friend. I know that you are an avid watcher of the live content, and you contribute a lot to our live content, and we're thinking about you guys. If you missed the top of the show, started off by showing some of the power outages there and just saying how sorry you are for having to go through that. I hope you guys get back quick. We are thinking about you for sure. And we'll keep it's got some more info, so we're going to stay on this for just 1 second. The mountains and areas in Lake Lure and Chimney Rock were destroyed. Asheville is only getting airlift supply and are isolated completely. I was in Asheville a couple of years ago. Stayed in an Airbnb in the mountains there. I can only imagine. I mean, I can only imagine what it looks. I mean, I've only seen the video, and I know that I don't know that we could even see the worst of the worst yet because I don't know that you can get to those places other than by helicopter, as Daniel mentioned. Appreciate you too, my friend. Please stay safe up there. April's asking, could this system ride up the Florida Gulf Coast? It could, and I do think the most likely scenario. And again, I'm not 100% confident on that, so we're still watching to see because if one of the main lobes on that, like at the GFS showed, strengthens a little bit and lifts up, we could be looking at a system lifting out of the Caribbean again, like a Helene, probably not as strong though, and then pushing over to Florida. There's going to be some extra wind shear involved this time that would help to weaken it. But I do think at the very least, we have some pretty heavy rain coming to the Florida Peninsula, especially for southern and central Florida, right around that area. Hopefully it's not a ton. Obviously the flooding that we had in Tampa and Clearwater and all that stuff was the Atlantic Ocean, or the Gulf of Mexico, I should say, my bad, pushing its way up. That's that storm surge that we always warn about. So Obviously, we don't want any of that. We need to dry out. Alrighty, guys. So here's where we stand. The yellow numbers are the most recent update from the Hurricane Center in NOAA in August, and obviously they doubled down at that point on their very active season. Here's the deal. We're standing at 11 storms. That includes Kirk, that was named today. It's a tropical storm. I'll show you that on satellite. It is going to be a beast of a hurricane, but it is going to stay out to sea. So I can't say that enough. It's going to stay out to sea. We have had 6 hurricanes. So this is the thing that we're going to look at. It's been quality versus quantity in this season. We talked about some of the limiting factors that kept the lid on there, and I can't stress enough. I know seasonal forecasting can kind of be stressful, especially when someone hears this forecast. And I know there's been a lot of gripe toward those seasonal forecasts because it's perceived as hype. I will tell you with certainty that the Hurricane Center and NOAA were not hyping anything. All the signs were there. Unfortunately, we're seeing them come on now. It would have been nice if things didn't come together until December when the season was basically over. But we're seeing, I think, at this point, what could have been. Because if you get these storms that were rolling off of Africa now, back when we had a Bermuda high close to the East Coast, we would have seen several East Coast strikes. Those East Coast strikes become a lot less common in October because we start to get more cold fronts as well. It's one of the reasons why we don't see as many in Texas in October, because those fronts that help to guide them off of and help them keep them out to sea for the most part. Again, things can change. Obviously, we had Sandy. We had one of those dips in the jet stream yank it back in, and obviously that was devastating for the Northeast. So it's always dependent upon the steering currents. Anyway, we've now had 2 major hurricanes. We're likely going to get to our 3rd with Kirk. That is the forecast. Before we get to Kirk, I want to show you more on kind of where we stand. Again, I like to be the transparency. And I see like 11th has a bunch of H's in there. So I was obviously excited. But anyway, there's the deal there. So the 11th now I can't even talk, emphasis on the H. The 11th named storm typically comes around on September 30th. I'm sorry, on October 2nd, where the 11th was named today on September 30th. So we're like 2 days ahead of where we should be because of this flurry of activity that just developed over the past few days. The 6th hurricane typically develops on October 15th. We are on September 27th with the 6th hurricane. So we are running a couple of weeks ahead of that. So intensity-wise, although when you look at the intensity metric, we are now running below normal. That ACE metric that was driven up, and we're going to go way above normal in a couple of days because Kirk is really going to drive up that intensity number, that accumulated cyclone energy, big time. We're at 78.27. 82.29 is average. So we're kind of right in line with where we should be in there, a few notches below that. But nonetheless, Kirk, which I'm going to show you right now, is going to really take a bite out of that. So there is Kirk, and it is looking very healthy. The environment is super favorable. And by the way, if you happen to be finding the content helpful, this live stream helpful, and you do want to stay updated on the weather, hit that subscribe button for me. I would appreciate it. We are growing the weather community here, and it's been great talking with everybody and meeting everybody on our live chats. So if you're interested in that kind of stuff and just talking weather without some of the garbage that's out there, or just want to stay informed about the weather without some of that stuff, would love to have you guys on board and join the team. Just hit that subscribe button and all of the above, and hit that thumbs up button too. It pushes us out to YouTube to let them know that we are a more credible source. We're trying to combat that stuff on this channel, and there was a lot of it last week. So I am more passionate than ever to make sure that people are getting credible information, good information, and stuff that doesn't scare the living daylights out of people as well. So here's the latest on Kirk. And again, I'm just showing you this because it's going to be a crazy storm. Thankfully, just a roller coaster ride for the fish and shipping channels out there. But you see it there getting to 125-mile-per-hour storm. Might have room to grow further. The water is warm out there. The upper level pattern is really good out there. So all that stuff too. Yeah, so Daniel brought up a good point about the moderators. We're going to work on that for next time because there were some crazy folks in the last stream. If you're ever wanted to be interested, tune in one of those live streams. My goodness. It got wild, but thank you to the people for doing that. We got them out, and David and myself were able to stream live, but holy cow. No, so good point on there. We'll work on this as the channel continues to grow, and I want to thank you guys for the support. And again, anybody from North Carolina, we just wish you the best. I know it's going to be a long run, and we're thinking about you guys. So we're praying for you all, and see, I love you guys. You guys were here with us last week. If anybody get this from Chris, anyone check on Bill. I've not seen Bill. Bill has not showed up on this live stream. This is why I love you guys. I mean, we can have a good time when we're talking about something serious as well. That's also important. During the thick of it, we needed a little bit of comic relief. So thank you for that, Chris. Appreciate you, my friend. Alrighty, guys, that about does it for this edition of Tropics Watch Live. We're going to be watching the Gulf of Mexico. If you want to stay updated, again, we're going to have video content on the Just Weather channel, and you can stay updated by subscribing to the free Tropics Watch newsletter. A lot of comments about Bill. I love it. For those that weren't on the live stream, Bill was, man, he was just going nuts with some stuff. Really appreciate that, Daryl. Thanks for being here again, and I hope that you're doing well after Ian. I know there's still a lot left to be done post Ian as well, and that's a thing that I think that a lot of people don't understand about these hurricanes. That they come in, they go, but man, the effects linger a long time. A long time. We had a situation when I was in high school. I'm from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. And obviously that's not on the coast, but in 2004, 20 years ago, and we actually just passed the 20-year anniversary of Hurricane Ivan. But we had Francis and Ivan come through, and we had a similar scenario, not as catastrophic as what they're seeing in North Carolina. But we had my dad's business got flooded. My front hill completely slid into the road. So 2004, it really highlighted again the inland effects that these hurricanes can have. When I worked in Virginia, we had crazy flooding from Hurricane Michael that came up obviously through the Florida Panhandle and got over the mountains there. And a couple of inches of rain over terrain is not a good thing. At one time, I should say, coming down a few inches per hour. And we had more than 2 feet of that in some cases during the hurricane. And then the day before that, we had flooding already induced by that heavy rain leading up to it. All right, I know I said it was going to go by. Oh, sweet, Abby. That's awesome. Pensacola, what is going on? Appreciate you too, Chris. We do need a big Canadian cold front. Now, the models do go out to the middle of October. There's a lot of dry air, and that's one of the things that kind of helps to maybe regulate some stuff. Man, we need a cold front bad. Long range. See, here we go. Long range again is, we looked at this prior to the season, and it did look like the hurricane season for Florida was going to shut off in October. Now, obviously, we still have a little bit of ways to go the way that things kind of shook out. But there's got to be a front out there sometime. For Central Florida, our first one on average is the middle of 15. The middle of October, right around August 15th. So, it has to end sometime. We're getting close. We are getting very close. And good question from Justin. Why don't hurricanes hit Cali very often? I assume currents push it west. They do. They want to keep it under kind of on that west coast of Mexico. Every now and then there's something to steer it up, but the water is super, super chilly. So I think it was Hillary a couple of years ago where there was all that stuff that a hurricane was going to come to LA, and there was some super heavy rain associated with Hillary, but the storm actually made landfall in the Baja Peninsula of California, Mexico, I should say, and all that stuff. But the number one reason why people are mentioning it here, ocean currents are pretty cool. Pacific is cool. And yeah, they want to go. I mean, most of the time they don't even make it out to Hawaii because the water starts getting cooler and then it starts running into some shear. Oh, and Joe missed some of the stream. So in summary, here's what I'm going to say about this thing. Monitor, but don't worry. I'm thinking now, and I don't even think this is how this is. Let me just show you real quick. If you guys don't mind. So I'm going to show you I'm going to show you a couple of models, and I don't like showing you like normal runs of some stuff, but we're going to take a look at tropicaltidbits.com. And here's the thing. There's that's it. Okay. So the GFS had been aggressive and then backed off, and the GFS has been aggressive and then, back off. And that's likely what we're going to see here again. But don't pay attention per se if you see something like ramp up to like a major hurricane. It's in the realm of possibilities, but I think it's on the lower end of possibilities because you see it here. Let me bring out my trusty telestrator on this computer, and there's a piece of it there, and kind of notice how all of this moisture is just being fanned on over to Florida. Like that's the kind of thing. And then it just kind of works its way up. I mean, obviously we don't want anything, okay? And that could be a lot of heavy rain over the next week or two. So that is that. The ensembles, which I got, I love to show you. Weather mush is a good term, and I'm hoping that it stays nice and sloppy. I mean, if we're going to get something, make it nice and sloppy and weak regardless of rain. There's the GFS ensembles. I mean, we're looking for the really bright yellows, and it does put some things over here. And again, that would be what climatology would suggest as well. Because we're now getting into October, and again, the westerlies pick up and all that stuff. This is going to be the Canadian. It's been a little more aggressive. So there it is again, putting it into the east, but rather weak. So we like weak. And then here are the Euro ensembles. They are more in line with where the GFS was, having it more consolidated and taking it to the east toward Florida. So it's something we have to watch. Beware the doom and gloom. Again, certainly it could get strong. The water is going to be certainly warm enough. It would be my hope, though, that we let me get rid of this. Let me need to get rid of my telestrator thing. And there would be getting in on a little bit of wind shear by the time it started racing to the north. High pressure's down there. It's not really right on top. So there are some things to watch. It was important to note, too, that the Hurricane Center did drop it from 50% to 40% through the course of today. So keep that in mind as well. Alrighty, guys, let's see. Can this do a Wilma? Wilma was in October. Yes, I don't think we're going to touch Wilma's intensity. But yeah, a track similar to Wilma for sure, because there's a dip in the jet stream pushing things over. Alrighty, guys. Thank you so much. A ton, if I can talk tonight. I hope everybody has a great evening. Thank you so much for being a part of the live stream, as we do every Monday and during all the storms. If you found this live stream helpful again, and if you're here for the first time, post in the comments if you're stumbling across the channel for the first time. If you liked it, hit subscribe button. If you don't, That's okay too. Hit that thumbs up button as well, so YouTube knows to push this out to more people. Appreciate you guys again, my friends in North Carolina that are that are recovering or trying to recover, and everybody from Florida to Georgia to South Carolina to Tennessee. There was a big area. We're thinking about you guys. We will see you soon. Be safe out there, everybody. We'll catch you on Monday. Hopefully not before live, because that would mean that things are going, but we might try to hop on live again this week in addition to some of that long form content on YouTube. Appreciate you guys. Thank you. We'll see you soon.